Welcome back to another episode of True Crime with Lux. For today's case, I am going to be talking about Elisa Lam and the Cecil Hotel. Now, this case does have a lot of conspiracies and theories, and I'll get into a couple of them, but I'm not going to go through all of them because I have my own personal opinions about what happened, and of course, they're my opinions, but that's what I'm going to mainly focus on instead of the speculations of all of the theories that are out there. Now, the Cecil Hotel was built in 1924 by William Banks. It was $1 million build back then, which is a lot of money. And it was supposed to be the go-to for businessmen, and it was supposed to be this high-class hotel. And it was in the center of Los Angeles. He just had big dreams for this hotel. And 2 years after the hotel finally opened, the Depression hit. And it did not go well for the Cecil, or anybody for that matter, but the Cecil ended up being far from what the expectations were. The area around the hotel became a place for people who had lost their homes, who were struggling with substances, and it actually got renamed to Skid Row. It was not a good neighborhood. It had really fallen into disrepair. The Cecil ended up having to drop their prices in order to make any kind of income, and nobody was going to spend a lot of money to stay on Skid Row at a hotel that was by this point falling apart. They weren't able to keep up with anything because it was so hard to make money. So the people that ended up staying at the Cecil were not what you would call the businessmen that this hotel was built for. The people that started staying there were homeless people who, if they got extra money, they would rent a room for the night just to have somewhere to sleep that wasn't on the streets. People who were doing drugs in the hotel rooms. It just really had fallen. They also ended up sectioning a part of the hotel and named it the Stay on Main, and it was more like apartments in a sense. So half the hotel was still a hotel and the other half was for permanent residents to rent the rooms. However, they would still require to, whether you were a guest at the hotel or you were staying in the apartment section, all of these shared the same elevator system, the same way to get in. So you would see the people who lived there along with the people who were just passing through, staying for a night or two. They were really trying to do whatever they could to maintain some semblance of an income to keep this hotel running. And this hotel had fallen to a level that criminals would stay here, addicts would stay here, dealers would stay here. There was a lot of illegal, shady things happening in this hotel at this point in time, and people like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was known to have stayed in this hotel. The crime rates, the deaths, the amount of people who take their own lives in this hotel, whether ODing or jumping out of windows or murders, it was rough. I'll say that. It's a very dark time for the Cecil. And they, regardless of all this, were still hoping and working towards making it a great hotel with the best of their abilities. Now, Elisa Lam was born in Canada. Her parents were from Hong Kong originally, but they moved right before having Elisa so that she could have more opportunities. And in 2013, at the age of just 21, Elisa decided to take a break from school and just travel and see more that was out there. She wanted to go to America, to the West Coast, and just have this great adventure. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and she was navigating what that meant and learning who she was now that she had a diagnosis. And that's what this trip was. It was to find herself, to see what her future holds, what else was out there for her, what she wanted to do, what she wanted to be. Elisa was a big blogger. She would blog all the time, just little updates about her life or questions or just to have some kind of connection with people. She started blogging about her plans to go on this trip, and she called it her West Coast tour. And she was excited. She posted about where she was going to be, what her plans were as far as what city she was going to see, and even as dangerous as it is, letting people know where she was, saying, if anybody wants to meet up or hang out, these are the areas I'll be in at these times, which we know nowadays it's not the safest to announce where you're going to be when you're going to be there to the public. But she was so excited, and she wanted to connect with people. She was very excited to go out on her own, to do this all on her own. But her parents were a little apprehensive because she was only 21. She'd never traveled like that before, and she had just been diagnosed with bipolar, so they weren't sure what to expect, what could happen to her. But at the same time, they were really hoping that this trip would help her figure out her new life, what she wanted to be, and where she was going to go. So where they were scared, they were also excited to see what came of this trip. She promised them, I'll call every single day. I'll check in. I'll let you know where I'm at, what I'm up to. I promise I'll keep you in the loop. And her parents were like, okay, that's all we can really ask for is that she inform us of where she's going. And that way we at least know she's safe. She's checking in every day. We know she's okay. Trip started on January 22nd, and she was going to start in San Diego with plans to then make her way to San Francisco, then to LA, and then Santa Cruz. She had it all planned out. And once she had all these plans together, she posted more details on her blog about which city she would be in on what days. And she just kept saying, I really hope anybody wants to meet up, and these are the places I'll be. You could just tell that she was so excited for all of this whole adventure. Now, on January 26th, Elisa checked into the Cecil Hotel. She had reserved a room that would give her roommates. It was kind of like a hostel, and the Cecil had set up certain rooms like this. They were separated by gender, so you had boy sections and girl sections. And it was to give people the cheaper option to stay at the hotel. And I get it at the same time. It's also, you have to really trust to stay in a random hotel in a city you've never been to with people you've never met. But she was okay. She said, that's fine. I'll stay in this. It's cheaper. I'll save money. It'll be great. However, the hotel had to give Elisa her own room because the roommates started complaining about her, saying that she was acting really weird and it was making them really uncomfortable. So she ended up getting her own room to stay while she was there. On January 31st, she was supposed to call and check in with her parents. She was also supposed to check out of the Cecil that same day. However, she never checked out, and she never called her parents to let them know where she was headed. Her parents knew right away that something was wrong because Elisa had been calling all the time, on time. They had a schedule and she was sticking to it. She had never faltered, never been late on a call without some kind of explanation or text saying, hey, something came up, I'll give you a call in a little bit. She was communicating the way that they had discussed. They had planned this. So when they didn't hear from her, they immediately got worried and they called the LAPD to inform them that Elisa hadn't checked in, they couldn't get a hold of her, and they were worried. They wanted to know where she was and what happened. After that phone call, they started getting plans together to go from Canada to LA. They wanted to be there, regardless if it was just missed phone call, whatever the situation was, they wanted to be in town. The police made their way to the Cecil and they checked the lobbies and all of the main areas that everybody had access to because they didn't have a warrant to actually search the rooms. And so searching these areas was all they could really do at the time. And pretty soon her parents were able to get to LA to help search for her. The police talked with employees at the Cecil who remembered Elisa, and there was also a bookstore right down the street that the owner remembered Elisa. They had a conversation, they talked about music and books, and Elisa was picking like souvenir things to bring back home. So she had talked to this owner for quite some time and left an impression, so the owner was like, yeah, I remember her coming in and all of this. Police were then able to get the footage from the hotel elevator on the day that Elisa went missing. After watching this video, they decided to release it to the public in order to see if anybody recognized her walking around somewhere, if anybody had seen her. Maybe she had just left the hotel and didn't come back to check out. So they wanted to put these images because this is the last outfit that she had been in. This is what she looked like on the day she went missing, and they were just hoping for some kind of tip. Now, there is a lot of speculation about this surveillance video, and I will give my 2 cents on it. But first, I will explain, for anybody who may have not seen it, what this video kind of had in it. And the footage shows Elisa. She gets in the elevator, she leans down to press a button, like her floor or something, before she moves to the very back of the elevator. It's not strange. It's something most people probably do because you never know if you're going to have somebody else get in the elevator. Now, the doors never close on the elevator. She pushes the button. Usually, after a couple of seconds, the elevator shuts. That never happened. The elevator just stayed open. She then pokes her head out into the hallway, and she looks around and then quickly pulls back in and goes to the corner of the elevator next to the buttons, and she's just kind of standing in that corner. A lot of people have described it as maybe the actions of somebody who was hiding. She then looks out again into the hallway, she looks around, and then steps into the hallway, and then back into the elevator. And she does this a few times, going into the elevator, going into the hallway, back and forth, not really sure why. Not sure if maybe she was trying to trigger a sensor on the door, trying to figure out why it wasn't closing. Maybe she heard a noise. We don't know. Inside of the elevator, she ends up pressing a bunch of the buttons. She just kind of runs her hands down the buttons and clicks a bunch of them. And still, the door never closed. The door never moved. It didn't even look like it tried to close and something stopped it. It just stayed open. She then went back into the hallway and starts moving her hands in front of her. And from this footage, which is blurry, it looks like she's feeling for something. When it's dark and you're like feeling in front of you, making sure you don't bump into things. That's what I got from this video, was that she was looking for something to be in front of her, and it wasn't there. There wasn't nothing in front of her. She was standing in an open elevator door. And it's very odd behavior. It is. So, now to note, this video was released, and a lot of conspiracy theories were brought up because the video has small missing bits of time. Not like big chunks of time, but like a few seconds here, a few seconds there, the video jumps. And this conspiracy about it was that somebody had messed with the video because they didn't want to be caught doing something to Elisa. It's not the case. In what I've read and what I've seen, the police are actually the ones who cut the video, because the purpose of putting this video out to the public was to see if anybody recognized Elisa. So they cut out frames of the footage that she wasn't in. When she walks out into the hallway and can't be seen by the camera, they didn't see a point in releasing that part of the footage because there's nothing to see there but an elevator. So they cut that so that you can only, they're only showing you when Elisa's there, so somebody can, maybe from a certain angle, people are like, oh yeah, I've seen her at this place, or I ran into her, or I think I've seen her over there. Like, the purpose of this video was to get Elisa out there. What she was wearing, how she looked, what her hair looked like, all of this was the purpose of this video. So yes, there is time lapses because staring at an empty elevator was not the purpose of putting this out. On February 19th of 2013, the guest of the Cecil started complaining to management that there was something wrong with the water in their rooms. The water pressure was low in a couple of them. Others said the water in the faucet tasted funny. So I'm not one to drink out of faucets. That's just a side note. But some said it tasted funny. Maybe it was when they were brushing their teeth. Not that it matters. I'm getting sidetracked. And some reported that when they first turned on the water, it was discolored. And after letting it run for a while, it would be clear again. So there was something wrong with the water in the hotel. A maintenance worker named Santiago Lopez went up to the roof to check on the water tanks to see what it could be. And he had to take the elevator to the 15th floor, and then he had to go up a set of stairs to get to the emergency exit that led to the roof. And this emergency exit had an alarm that needed to be disarmed in order for him to go out there and not set off the alarm. So he disarmed it, and he got onto the roof, and he climbed up the ladder that led to the top of the tank, where there is a door or a lid, however you want to describe it. And once up there, he looked inside of the tank, and he saw the body of a young woman floating. This tank is 8 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. So when police arrived, in order to get the body out of this tank, they actually had to drain it and cut a hole in the side of it because there was no way to get her out from the latch on the top. The body was confirmed to be Elisa Lam's, and it had been in there for about 3 weeks. And at that point, being in the water for so long, she had decomposed pretty badly. Her clothes were found in the tank as well, but she wasn't wearing them. There is theories as to why that could have been. It could have been she took them off herself, that she realized that she couldn't swim well with all of those clothes on, so she started stripping off layers to weigh less in the water, to maybe tread water, maybe in the hopes of reaching the latch. But the water level was too low for, once she was in there, she wasn't going to be able to get back out on her own. Others have said or theorized that maybe she was killed and the person threw her clothes inside of it. I personally don't believe this. I know that this case has got a lot of questions, but to me there are answers that hurt, that aren't what you in a way hope for. That's how you want to word it. But at the same time, I'll get to it with my theory and my opinion of what happened. So investigators started to try and piece together what happened to her. They wanted to know how she even got onto the roof to begin with. How did she get up there? How did she get into the tank? And there was a supposed alarm on the emergency door that leads to the roof. So if she had gone up there, or if somebody had taken her up there, that alarm would have gone off and everyone would have heard it. It's like a fire alarm going off in the building. When they had brought search dogs originally, when they were looking for Elisa, the dogs did get a scent on a fire escape. So it is a possibility that she climbed up the fire escape to get up there instead of taking the emergency door. It's also a big possibility that this hotel that is a bit run down and not really kept up on maintenance or anything, that the alarm didn't work or wasn't set. We don't know. I couldn't find anything that said if the door was tested to see if the alarm worked, but she had to get up there some way. And whether it be the fire escape or the emergency door didn't have an alarm, either way, it doesn't change the fact that she got up there. During her autopsy, her death was ruled an accidental drowning with bipolar disorder to be a contributing factor. And there was also stated in there that there was no foul play found. They didn't find anything that would suggest that she was injured and then shoved in there. There was no evidence. And I get that she had been in there a while, so if you want to go with theories or you want to speculate, sure, maybe you just couldn't find the evidence if there was any foul play done. They were saying that she had a psychotic break and was suffering from hallucinations, which led to all of this happening. They also did a drug test, and the results showed that Elisa was supposed to be on taking 2 antidepressants a day, along with her antipsychotic meds. In her system at that time, she only showed that she had taken one of her antidepressants. And that can be very dangerous, especially for somebody who was just diagnosed, who is just starting these meds. It could cause her to go into a mania or have hallucinations or both, which it makes sense to me, the behavior she was exhibiting in the elevator. If she wasn't on her meds properly and she was seeing things and hallucinating, that behavior makes sense to me. Because Elisa was still new to all of this. She had recently been diagnosed. And that was a fear for her going out there alone because she didn't have anybody who knew her to keep an eye on her, to make sure or remind her, hey, did you take your meds? Are you okay? To see the signs of something going wrong. And there were signs going wrong, in my opinion, when her roommate said that she was acting odd and making them uncomfortable. Maybe that was the start of it. And instead of anybody noticing or helping, they just gave her a room by herself. And she was left on her own, probably scared, not knowing what was going on because she was having hallucinations and didn't know what was real and what wasn't. I mean, that's just my opinion, and it makes the most sense to me. Her parents ended up filing a wrongful death suit against the Cecil Hotel, and they said that the hotel was negligent. And that negligence led to Elisa's death. Somebody should have noticed that she was having hallucinations. And I get being in that area. Things like that are probably normal for everybody to see. People who are walking around on some kind of substance. In and out of that hotel are people who do all sorts of drugs. And as horrible as it is to say, the employees, the guests at the Cecil, if somebody was hallucinating, that was probably very normal for them to see. And I find it negligent. I agree with the negligence of how she could access that roof. That was negligent. There should not be any way for a guest to gain access to the roof without some kind of management being notified. Whether that door was broken or somebody forgot to set the alarm, or if a fire escape had access to that roof, and that I find negligent because You shouldn't, especially with the fact that this hotel is known for having people commit suicide or jumping. To have ease of access to the roof, I find that negligent. Now, the defense argued that fact that there were no surveillance cameras on the roof, so even if somebody did get up there, you would never know. There's no surveillance, there's no securities put in place, nothing. The prosecution argued that it was Elisa and her family that were negligent, which is a very shitty thing to say to a family who just lost a loved one. They could have, I get their job is a prosecution. I get that they have to argue against any wrongdoing by the hotel, but to put the blame on somebody who lost a loved one is very shitty. Now, the suit ended up being dismissed by the judge because he said it was an unforeseeable tragedy. Nobody could have predicted that this would happen, and that area was supposed to be off limits to guests. How she got up there, regardless of how she got up there. He didn't see why the hotel was responsible for that. Again, it shouldn't be easy to get access to the roof of a hotel. Now, my opinion, as I've kind of said as we've been going, is that this was a very tragic accident. That Elisa was struggling with her bipolar and was on a trip all alone with nobody who knew what she was going through, nobody that could see when she wasn't taking her meds. There was nobody to help her there to make sure she was okay, except for a probably brief conversation she had with her parents to check in. Everybody else in that area wouldn't have even noticed because of how bad it has become. And it's tragic and it's heartbreaking. And at the same time, you want to blame someone. I get that. For the family, I get wanting to understand in a way of who did this? Why did this happen? But if Elisa just had a mental break and was hallucinating and scared and wandered up to that roof, and maybe she was hiding from something that nobody else could see, and she climbed in that tank thinking it would be safe, and once inside realized her mistake. It's sad. It is heartbreaking to lose somebody who was so excited about the world, about everything, so young. We don't do enough for mental health, in my opinion, but that's where I will leave that. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope everybody has a great day and you stay safe, and I will be talking to you later.